spending time with the OnePlus 13 earlier this year really made me rethink what value for money actually means. So instead of heading north of 1000 plus territory, I started wondering, what if I went to the complete opposite direction? What does sub 500 or even sub 400 really get you these days? That question led me here, the Nothing Phone 3A. If you're unfamiliar with the brand, this is Nothing's entry-level device, and if I had to describe it in a single word, it would be unorthodox. Given its quirky looks and a $379 price tag, I expected it to be easy to dismiss. But the more I used it, the more I realized I was completely wrong. To be honest, upon unboxing the phone, I was prepared to treat it as a budget phone from the get-go, but not long after I set it up, I realized I can very much treat it as a much more expensive device and compare it to something like my S25 Ultra, which is a compliment on its own. So the question in my head at this point was, how long will I be able to tolerate any compromises this phone might throw at me before I get the itches to go back to my Ultra? By the way, if you end up enjoying this video, subscribe, because why not? So, the unboxing experience was budgety, yet tasteful. No power brick to brag about, but tasteful plastic-free packaging execution with a hint of nice personal message on the inside of the flap. Oh, and a pre-installed screen protector, which is always something I can appreciate. Upon unwrapping the phone itself, I was surprised by two things. First, how big this device actually is, not that it's not written in the description of the phone, but still, and how comfortable it feels in the hand at the same time. You see, the design is where I think Nothing has struck a near-perfect balance. This isn't a small phone by any means, and placing it side by side with something like the S25 Ultra really puts its dimension into perspective. And at first glance, with its squared-off silhouette and thicker bezels, I expected it to feel bulky and uncomfortable in the hand, but it's quite the opposite. The reason for that is the secret sauce, which is the plastic sides paired with a glass back. Now I know, plastic doesn't scream premium, but here it actually works in favor of usability. It gives the phone a ton more grip than slick titanium or aluminum alternatives, making it incredibly forgiving to hold even without a case. That, combined with the subtle curves and balanced weight, whiffs a sense of security that I haven't felt in many modern flagships. Now, the only reason I purchased the OEM translucent case for this phone is because I wanted to stick a magnet on it so I can use my trusty propping contraption. But other than that, I could have easily used this phone without a case. It is super comfortable to hold and very secure. And then there is the whole aesthetics. Quirky, translucent, unmistakably Nothing. That design paired with the unique UI, which I'll get to in a bit, somehow makes the thicker bezels part of the story instead of a flaw. In person and in the hand, the 3A doesn't look or feel cheap at all. If anything, it's quite the head turner. From all the phones I've carried in recent years, this one has sparked the most curiosity from the people around me. Friends and family keep asking what it is, and that to me says a lot.
Sugi. What's good, as?
Oh yeah. Can I?
Yeah, of course.
See ya.
There are, of course, a few touches that feel a little less refined, like the dedicated essential space button, which I'll talk about in a moment. But overall, the hardware feels deliberate. Even the volume buttons placed smack in the middle of the opposite side make the perfect sense to me. I often hold the phone rotated counterclockwise, and in that orientation they're right where I want them. Setting up the Nothing Phone 3A was surprisingly smooth too. I transferred all my data from the S25 Ultra using a cable and ran into zero issues during the process. But once everything was done, I was met with chaos. My home screen looked completely exploded, and when you combine that mess with Nothing's monochromatic aesthetics and quirky styling, it was honestly a bit intimidating at first. Everything looked how should I put this? Very black and white. But that contrast also made me immediately notice just how bright this display gets. Unlike other phones that hide their full brightness behind automatic triggers, this one lets you crank it up a lot straight out of the slider. And if I throw in the Glyph lights and the built-in flash, I could probably light up an entire room with this thing and nothing else. So aside from the standard torch or flashlight that you can use, you can also enable the Glyph interface for that additional lighting here. And if you want to take it further and really use this thing as a decent lantern somewhere, you can go to light mode and really crank up the brightness, and it's pretty impressive in person, to be honest. Back to the setup process. Since all my apps came over from another device, the 3A dumped them across multiple home screen pages with no folders, no organization, just raw icon chaos. And here's the kicker, there's no simple way to remove multiple apps at once. No batch select, no page delete, just manual one-by-one cleanup. It literally took me over 30 minutes to declutter everything, which is, let's just say, not my idea for a good time. During that little deletion marathon, I noticed something that honestly felt like a deliberate UI joke too. The remove option, when you long press on an app, changes its appearance depending on who knows what. Sometimes it's a text button up top, other times it's a tiny icon in the corner, and occasionally it shows up on the bottom. There's zero consistency here, and that would have been fine if I could at least see which app I'm interacting with while holding it. But with the default minimalist icon styling, good luck identifying anything at a glance. And that inconsistency doesn't stop there. While digging into things like the quick settings panel, I ran into some issues. Some sections are clearly labeled, while others rely entirely on iconography that you're just supposed to understand intuitively. It's one of those you either get it or you don't approaches. Oh, and the vibration motor? A bit on the weak side. Not a deal breaker, just a quiet reminder now and then of where this phone sits in the price spectrum. That and the lack of wireless charging, things that pull me back to reality. But this is where I put the dot. Because despite the handful of compromises you just heard, the 3A is a phone that grew on me faster than anything I've tried in recent memory. Almost all these little adjustment moments faded away once I set it up the way I like it. And that's when the personality of the phone started to shine through. Talking about personality, there's an app called Composer. Thank you so much. So this app allows you to create your own ringtone using the buttons here, which of course light up in accordance to the glyph on the back of the phone. And it's pretty funky because if I press record, things get very, very interesting. I guess I need to work on this more. I noticed the playful touches, the sound effects when locking and unlocking, the smooth, almost cheeky animations sprinkled across the UI. Then the widget, they're so good, they inspired me to try building similar ones on the iPhone. That's the kind of impact we're talking about here. There's so many customizable options here that I could probably do an entire episode on just that. Take the folders for example. I get to choose how they behave and what they look like. Whether that's a classic expanded view that works like a cleaner, smarter version of my iPhone's app drawer, or one of the funkier circular styles. I can even hide folders behind customizable cover icons. For example, my messaging and entertainment folders are now hidden behind such customizable covers, and I think it looks clutch. Now, something that I've been asked many times in my previous videos is when it comes to my cleaner style of folders on each of my devices, and the same principle applies on this phone. Let me show you how it works. Now, to achieve this cleaner look, what I do is I hide the folder names. And the way that I can do that, because all the folders are requiring you to put something in there, you can't just leave it empty. I Google invisible character, which is this very simple website, and I just copy an invisible character, and from that point I can go back to the home screen and rename that folder, delete the name, and just paste that invisible character, and then confirm, And at this point, things look much cleaner. Then there's the quick settings widget. In my opinion, this should be standard on every phone. I can place this thing in the quick settings menu or directly on the home screen and assign it to a variety of functions. In my case, I use two, one for instantly switching to silent mode or vibrate, and another for toggling do not disturb, which might just be the best version I've used on any phone so far. Pair all that with the Nothing UI, where every icon is masked in the same signature monochromatic style, and I'm left with something genuinely fun. A phone that feels different in the best way possible. Super fresh. From a hardware standpoint, things are surprisingly solid too. That 6.77-inch display I mentioned earlier, it's seriously bright, and while it's just Full HD, it never once felt like a downgrade. Not even when compared to phones that cost 3 or 4 times the price. With a 120Hz refresh rate, it even puts the more expensive budget iPhone 16e in the corner. Also, the fingerprint sensor is quick and reliable, on par with some of the fastest out there, and Face Unlock has just been as snappy, nothing to complain about on day-to-day basis. Powering the 3A is the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2, which is technically a mid-range chip, sitting below the Qualcomm's flagship offerings. But here's the thing, in almost a month of use, I haven't once felt like I needed more performance. Whether I'm scrolling through socials, handling light work, or jumping into, a few occasional gaming sessions, this phone has been consistently zippy and super fluid. Battery life is just as impressive. Coming from devices like the S25 Ultra and the OnePlus 13, I expected a step down, but honestly, it didn't feel like that. The standard lithium-ion 5000 mAh battery delivers easily a day and a half, sometimes two, with zero overheating whatsoever. And that 50-watt wire charging, in my opinion, hits the sweet spot. Everything I've said so far aside though, the camera is where the 3A starts to show its limitations. In daylight, the main sensor delivers very decent results and portraits come out nicely, but the telephoto lens, it's very basic. I just don't see that creamy compression that I can witness on a flagship device, and the ultrawide is where things really fall off. It's fine for group shots if there's enough light, but softness creeps in quickly even when conditions are perfect. Low light is perhaps the biggest challenge for this camera system, and with video capped at 4K 30 on the main and 1080p elsewhere, it's not exactly built for creators aiming to shoot, polished social media reels. All the hardware camera limitations aside, what nothing has done within the camera app itself is truly something interesting. So if I press the little arrow on the bottom here to open up a menu, I get a set of presets. But these are not just ordinary presets that, just make your image look different. Although I think the last one, which is the lenticular preset, is pretty cool because you can pretty much turn any photo into a classic nothing wallpaper. But what's interesting in those presets is the fact that you can create your own preset that could be anything. So let me show you what I mean. So if I go to the plus sign to create a preset, I can either import one or create it from scratch. I can have a cover photo for it, of course a title and everything else. And in this preset, I can say that this preset can take a photo or video or a slow-mo or a panoramic photo or whatever you have in mind. And I have all the dials that I want to be part of this preset. So instead of going through the regular menu to, let's say, trigger a slow motion video that you might often want to use at a certain point, you can just create a preset and just swipe up from the bottom in the camera and trigger that preset right away. It's pretty cool. I'm at the usual spot where I normally do video tests. I'm shooting with the Nothing 3A in 4K at 30 FPS, which is pretty much where it caps. Now I'm not sure what it looks like. It's standard settings, and you tell me in the comments what it actually sounds like. I'm interested to know, given all the noise from the cars here. Shortcomings aside, if you want a fun, reliable phone that won't break the bank, this one is an easy yes. And the best part, if you're not into nothing's quirky aesthetic, you can dial it back to a classic Android look. Honestly, if it wasn't for the cameras, I could be rocking the 3A and I'll be 100% happy as a guy who just found cash in last year's jacket. With 3 years of Android updates and 6 years of security patches, I can't really ask for more. In fact, if I do simple math, I could upgrade to a new nothing baseline model every year for 3 years and still not reach the entry price of some current flagships, and that's value. Talking about value, my OnePlus 13 episode chose the higher tier alternative of the Nothing Phone 3A, so you can check it out right here. And of course, like and subscribe to the channel as well as my newsletter, and as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is E, over and out.